Chapter 25, Southern Africa, Section 3, Southern Africa Today. Today, South Africa has a stable government and the strongest economy in the region. In addition, many South Africans are enjoying new rights and freedoms. The country has made great progress in resolving the problems of its past, but it still faces many challenges. The end of apartheid. Ending apartheid, the separation of races, has probably been South Africa's biggest challenge in recent years. Many people around the world objected to the country's apartheid laws. For that reason, they put sanctions, economic or political penalties imposed by one country on another to force a change in policy on South Africa. Some countries banned trade with South Africa. Several companies in the United States and Europe refused to invest their money in South Africa. In addition, many international scientific and sports organizations refused to include South Africans in meetings or competitions. The sanctions isolated South Africa. As other countries in Southern Africa gained independence, South Africa became more isolated. Protests within the country increased. In response, the government outlawed the African National Congress, or ANC. This group had been formed to protect the rights of black South Africans. Many ANC members were jailed or forced to leave the country. The anti-apartheid protests continued, however. In the late 1980s, the efforts of the ANC and anti-apartheid protesters contributed to social and political change. In 1990, the government released its political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela. Mandela was elected president in 1994 after South Africans of all races were given the right to vote. Today, all races have equal rights in South Africa. The country's public schools and universities are open to all people, as are hospitals and transportation. However, economic equality has become more slowly. White South Africans are still wealthier than the vast majority of black South Africans. Still, South Africans now have opportunities for a better future. Government and economy. South Africa's government and economy are well positioned to create a better future for the country. South Africa's new government is a republic with an elected president. The country's constitution emphasizes equality and human rights. In working toward equality, the government is trying to create jobs and better conditions for black workers and farmers. Currently, most of South Africa's wealth and industries are still controlled by whites. However, even some officials who favor reform are afraid to execute new policies. They fear that rapid change will weaken the economy. They are also concerned that it might cause educated and wealthy whites to leave the country. South Africa's strong economy may help bring economic opportunities to the entire population. The country has more resources and industry than most African countries. For example, South Africa is one of the world's leading producers of several valuable minerals: gold, platinum, and chromium. The country is also a major exporter of gold and diamonds. Large cities in South Africa also contribute to the country's economy. Africa's largest industrial area is located in Johannesburg. In addition, beautiful cities such as Cape Town attract many tourists. The 8 other countries in the region share some characteristics with South Africa. Some, but not all, have strong economies and stable governments. Lesotho and Swaziland. These two countries are particularly influenced by South Africa. Lesotho and Swaziland are both enclaves. An enclave is a small territory surrounded by foreign territory. Lesotho and Swaziland are both located completely or almost completely within South Africa. Swaziland shares part of its border with Mozambique. Because it is so small, Lesotho has few resources or agricultural land. As a result, it is a poor country. Many of its people work in nearby South Africa. In spite of its poverty, Lesotho has the highest female literacy rate in Africa. Most children, including females, get at least a primary education in free schools run by Christian churches. Swaziland has some important mineral deposits and industry. Cattle raising and farming are also common there. A good transportation system helps Swaziland to participate in foreign trade. Lesotho and Swaziland are both kingdoms. Although each country has a king as a head of state, each is governed by an elected prime minister and a parliament. Namibia. Namibia gained its independence from South Africa as recently as 1990. Now it is a republic with an elected president and legislator. Its capital, Windhoek, is located in the Central Highlands. Very few people live in Namibia's desert in the east and the west, but these areas are the sites of some of the richest mineral deposits in Africa. Most of the country's income comes from the mining of diamonds, copper, uranium, lead, and zinc. Fishing in the Atlantic Ocean and sheep ranching are also important sources of income. In spite of this strong economy, however, most people are still poor. Botswana. Botswana is one of Africa's success stories. Thanks to mineral resources and a stable democratic government, the main economic activities in Botswana are cattle ranching and diamond mining. Recently, international companies have built factories there, and tourism is increasing. Although unemployment is high, the country has had one of the world's highest rates of economic growth since the 1960s. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has suffered from a poor economy and political instability. Zimbabwe does not lack resources. It has gold and copper mines, as well as productive agriculture and manufacturing. However, high inflation, debts, and war have hurt the economy. In addition, there is much inequality. Although white residents made up less than 1% of the population, they owned most of the large farms and ranches. In 2000, the president began a program to take farmland from white farmers and give the land back to black residents. This action led many white farmers to leave the country and caused food shortages. The attempt at land reform, the poor economy, and violent acts against political opponents have made people in Zimbabwe unhappy with the president. Although he was re-elected in 2002 and 2008, most people think the elections were flawed. Mozambique. Mozambique is one of the world's poorest countries. The economy has been badly damaged by civil war, but it is improving. Mozambique's ports ship many products from the interior of Africa. Taxes collected on these shipments are an important source of income. Also, plantations grow cashews, cotton, and sugar for export. The country must import more than it exports, however, and it relies on foreign aid. Madagascar and Comoros. Madagascar was ruled for more than 20 years by a socialist dictator. Today, the elected president is working to improve the struggling economy. Most of the country's income comes from exports of coffee, vanilla, sugar, and cloves. Madagascar also has some manufacturing, and the country is popular with tourists who come to see the unique plants and animals. Comoros is a country made up of 4 tiny islands. It suffers from a lack of resources and political instability. The government of Comoros is struggling to improve education and promote tourism. Issues and challenges. Although conditions in many countries of southern Africa are better than they are on much of the continent, the region has its own challenges. One of the most serious problems facing southern Africa is poverty. Terrible droughts often destroy food crops. In addition, many of southern Africa's people are unemployed. Disease is another problem. Southern Africa has high numbers of people infected with HIV. The region's governments are trying to educate people to slow the spread of disease. Another challenge is environmental destruction. For example, in Madagascar, deforestation leads to erosion. There is hope for the future, though. Namibia was the first country in the world to put environmental protection in its constitution. Also, the African Union works to promote cooperation among African countries. The AU tries to solve problems across the continent.
On this planet, unblinking, step into the sun. There is more to see than can